Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Pitch Purpose with Tony Winslow. You are here because you believe that purpose and profit can coexist and that neither should have to sacrifice. So I'm excited here to introduce you to Park Howell. Park is known as the world's most industrious storyteller, having grown purpose-driven brands by as much as 600%. He is a 35-year veteran of the advertising industry and now consults, teaches, coaches, and speaks internationally to help business, sales, and marketing leaders excel through the stories that they tell. He's the host of the popular weekly Business of Story podcast, which is ranked among the top 10 of downloaded podcasts in the world. Park has published Brand Bewitchery in 2020 to help you use his proven story cycle system, which we'll talk about today, that is used to craft spellbinding stories for your brand. In 2021, he also co-authored The Narrative Gym for Business, which is a short 75-page guide on how to use the foundational narrative framework of the ABT and but therefore to make you a more confident, compelling, and persuasive communicator. So welcome, Park, to the show.
Thanks, Tony. Great to be here with you, man.
Absolutely. Well, Park, tell me about you, about your origin story of the business of story and what your purpose is in your business and as a leader.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned earlier, Tony, I've been in this advertising, branding, marketing world for 35 plus years, and I ran my own ad agency in Phoenix, Arizona for 20 of those years. It was called Park & Co. And at that time, we really focused on sustainability initiatives, conservation projects. It's really then evolved into working with brands that were very purpose-driven, doing something and having a great impact in the community besides just selling something. And I enjoyed that world, running my own agency for 20 years. But I found with technology, the internet, us being bombarded by really inane communication, that our work in branding and marketing, and especially for purpose-driven brands, was not nearly as effective and impactful as it could have been. So I went looking for an answer in the early 2000 aughts, and I was fortunate. Our son Parker was going to film school at Chapman University in Orange, California, which is an outstanding film school, now ranked one of the top in the world. So he told me. And while he was going there, I told him, I said, Parker, can you send me your books and any recorded lectures, seminars when you're done with them, since I'm paying for them, because I would like to, learn what does Hollywood know about storytelling to help you become a competitive storyteller in the most competitive storytelling market and industry in the world. And of course, Tony, I was looking at that for our own work in advertising, marketing, business communications, whatever. That's when I found the hero's journey and did a lot of studying on that. Joseph Campbell, America's foremost mythologist, and it hit me upside the head. And I'm saying, wow, this is like a beautiful template for story strategy for purpose-driven brands. And then I found the 15 Beats to Story by Blake Snyder, which was another version of the hero's journey. And these are what inspired me to create my 10-step story cycle system that is found in my book, Brand Bewitchery. And I'll tell you real quick, the very first time, it was really a science project for me. I thought, this has to work in our world. Let's see if we can make that work. And I was very fortunate. I had a customer show up, Adelante Healthcare, and they were a community healthcare center out here in Arizona. And their whole mission was to make really high quality healthcare available to all people, regardless of their ability to pay. But at this time, it was 2008, 2009, middle of the big recession. They were having a really hard time and were almost ready to go under after 33 years. So Aveen Sethi Tafoya, the CEO at the time, said, Park, can you help us rebrand this, refresh this thing? We need a new vision to get us through this misery and really, expand our impact. So I said, yes, would you be open to try my new 10-step story cycle system? Absolutely. She got into it. We used it, again, based off the hero's journey, to recraft that brand story of Adelante Healthcare to really focus on the purpose of the organization. And I can tell you after that, they grew by 600% and opened some of the very first LEED certified healthcare centers in the country. And this was done by a company that was almost going out of business. So it's a testament to really understanding and embracing your purpose in the world, and then finding the right tools. In this case, it was the story cycle system to help craft that overall brand narrative story strategy, and then go and find and unearth the stories that you are going to use in all of your marketing. And like I said, they grew by 600%. And Aveen will be the first one to tell you it was simply because they got their purpose-driven story dialed in using the story cycle system, and that became their North Star that guided them for everything. That's what got me hooked on storytelling in brand development. That's why I then actually evolved away from running my ad agency. And as you mentioned at the top of the show, that's why this is all I do now is consult, teach, coach, and speak on the power of story to help business leaders, especially purpose-driven leaders, excel through the stories they tell.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing, Park. So I have a lot of marketers that listen to and watch this podcast, and we love a good framework, especially storytelling. And you know the importance of storytelling in your marketing. First thing that popped in my head as I was reading through your website and looking at the business that you do was story brand. So you talked to me a little bit earlier when we were speaking, but can you talk to me about how the story cycle system is different than story brand, and what your unique special sauce is to what you do?
Well, story brand is a solid marketing tool. In fact, I took the whole story brand course when it first came out. I'm not a certified story brand dude. I just took the course because I wanted to see how they're teaching it. And they do a nice job with basic story structure. And it's really good if you're going to use it to build out a website or a landing page. It's really, like I say, it's more of a marketing tool than it is a brand storytelling tool. How it's different is the story cycle system actually takes you into a deep dive into your own personal and professional brand. Takes you through 10 different exercises to get you really super focused on what you stand for in that purpose-driven way so that you can stand out in the world. And it shows you then how to go and unearth these stories that you need to help support your overall narrative strategy. Now, you might argue that story brand would be a little tool inside of my bigger story cycle system, that once you get your story down and you really understand it, then you might be able to use their marketing template and story brand to create a more powerful website and or landing page. But I get a lot of story brand customers that come to me, even some of their certified folks that come to me and say, Park, this is really good story brand for this marketing side, but it really lacks the depth of your process to really help me dive in and find the philosophical differentiator in that brand purpose for a brand. And so that's what my process does. Not only helps you unearth it, but then shows you how to share those stories in all of your channels, not just your website, but in person, social channels, and everywhere else. So that's the big difference. Story brand's a nice marketing tool. The story cycle system is a deep dive to really help you understand what your brand narrative is. And like I say, to be able to tell your story on purpose.
For sure. How do you work with business leaders? So I imagine that you're working with these founders and these head of the company, helping them understand like these life values and how they connect to their business values. Like, what does that process look like for you just to kind of get started?
Yeah, it's a great question, Tony, and it's not that difficult. And here's why I say that. So all real conscientious business leaders are out to create something with a greater purpose than just selling a bunch of widgets. And what I mean by that is their heart and soul is really into helping their colleagues grow and be the best people they can be. That's their own kind of purpose. They're in it to help their customers grow and only buy products and services from them that they actually need, that they can demonstrate to them will level them up. And certainly with the communities they serve. So that's the impact on vendor relations, on stakeholders, as well as the greater community at large. And a lot of these companies that I work with already intuitively understand they're doing this. They're doing some really amazing things. They're just not doing a very good job of talking about it. So all I have to do is hold a mirror up to them and say, look, you've got your purpose. You've been doing this. I'm not going to invent your purpose for you. But I'm going to show you how to articulate it in a way that's both familiar to people and yet novel. And novel, the familiarity beckons them into the story, of course, but the novelty of the story is for you as a brand, your own uniqueness in how you talk about this story. One of the examples that you and I had talked about a little bit earlier was in the B2B world in particular. There's a company called AvantPage, and they are an international translations firm. They're out of Davis, California, but they have offices in Warsaw, Poland, Mexico City, New York City, and they've opened up several more since I worked with them a few years ago on their brand story. The interesting thing about them is they already had this purpose. They just didn't really embrace it or realize the importance of it. So Luis Miguel, the founder of AvantPage, grew up in Mexico, and he came to America, could kind of speak English, with the University of Colorado, ended up getting his MBA and moved on. And he realized the great, gigantic gap that immigrants have in trying to realize their own American dream comes in not being able to understand the English language. And the translations that he was working with were really, really poor. So he said, how do my people even make this transition? Because the translations they're getting are no good. So he set out and built this really solid international translation company, and it's all based on helping immigrants realize their American dream. So his vehicle is the translations world. But his bigger purpose is, if I can help these immigrants overstand, not understand, but overstand, and look up that word. It's a really interesting word we use. Overstand what it takes to become an American, then we'll get a lot more of these immigrants in here becoming American citizens and then having the impact in America that we all hope to have. So to me, it's a great example of putting your brand story first, of helping immigrants realize their American dream. And you can check it out at avantpage.com, avantpage.com, and you'll go in and see how their purpose-driven story is expressed through their website, through their case studies in there, through the subheads. You're going to see that story being shared throughout everything they do.
That's awesome. And what I love about from listening to your podcast episode with them is that they're selling to government organizations, but their end goal and the purpose and the people that they serve are those immigrants. So that's something that with Pitch Purpose and the entrepreneurs that I'm speaking to, and that I hope to speak to, is that they have that, they do what they're doing, and maybe their end user is the people that they're serving with who they're selling to, but maybe it's a different group like immigrants, or I spoke with a founder of a coffee company in Newport, Kentucky, and the people that he is serving are his supply chain and these orphans in Nicaragua. So he's producing really great stuff, but the purpose is beyond that. So helping companies see through what they're doing and how it connects to the people and the cause that they serve, despite what their product actually does, I think is really unique.
Yeah.
So
we often say to me about people don't care what you make. Yeah, people don't care what you make. They only care about what you make happen in their life. And so if you can really be driven by purpose, you can make that outcome that much more appealing to them. Again, another way of thinking about it is people don't care about your offering. They only care about the outcome. So it's something that purpose-driven brands and leaders really need to keep an eye on.
Absolutely. So talk to me about, well, I'll preface it with this, is that it's more common, at least from a consumer standpoint, to see business to consumer brands, specifically like consumer packaged goods, whether it be, razors or shoes or, laundry detergent or deodorant, things like that. You kind of see that cause-based marketing, and you can see a purpose within the brand. But it's not always common with these business to business companies, which I appreciate the example with Avant-Garde. But can you, for the business to business leaders that might be listening to this podcast, give them your tips and some brief advice on how they can find a purpose and find a cause to serve, and then tell stories around that with their business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really begins with shaking them out of their logic-driven, reasoned brain. And I find this all the time. My primary work is with the B2B world and get them to humanize their offering through how they tell their stories and how they approach their storytelling. And what so often happens, Tony, in the business world is, it's being driven by a lot of MBAs. And God bless the MBAs in the world, but very few of them are taught really how to humanize and communicate their offering. So what I show them is I say, let's put the logic and reason by the wayside, because as who what was his name? Haidt, Jonathan Haidt, famous American social psychologist, says our brain is a story processor, not a logic processor. So in B2C, story becomes much more evident in that kind of work. But B2B, we tend to park the story to the side and we try to lead with logic and reason. So the very first thing that I ask them to do is I say, what do you actually really stand for? I mean, you got to be in this business much more than just for making money. Otherwise, that's just not enough to sustain you to get up and, sleepless nights and everything else. What is that bigger purpose that you stand for? And then how do you communicate that on a very emotional level? I like to say, how do you hack through the noise and hook into the hearts of your prospects out there? And so a lot of times, the companies that come to me already realize that they have a purpose in play, and they actually may already have a pretty decent brand and brand narrative in play. They just don't know how to talk about it. I typically don't work with folks that just show up and say, hey, can you help me with my brand? And if I start asking them about what is the bigger purpose and they don't have one, then Tony, they're probably not the right customer for me, because they haven't embraced that yet. They haven't really embraced this fact that, give you an example of a good example of a brand that has embraced it. Last week, I was in San Francisco working with Checkr. That's CHECKR. They are a high-tech company, a SaaS platform for background checks for employment purposes. And they're very, very large. A lot of companies use them. And I was working with their sales and marketing team in their annual revenue generation conference there. And they made me aware of their purpose, which I was not aware of before I got there. And they have this really great purpose about helping folks in prison that are coming through prison, men and women alike, that had made a bad choice in their life, had paid their debt to society, and now want to get out and get reintroduced back into society. And they were telling me these obstacles that they have to overcome are enormous. And one of them, of course, is that employee background check. So they've got a whole program there at Checkr that they work with them. It's called Fair Chance Hiring. And Checkr uses its experience in background checks to essentially maybe ultimately vouch for these folks coming out saying, yep, they made a mistake in their life. They've paid their dues. Now they want to be productive citizens again. To me, that is a beautiful example of a B2B purpose beyond just providing employee background checks. Now, I don't know as much about it yet as I'm going to, because I'm going to have one of their leaders on my show coming up here in the next couple of weeks to talk about the stories around their fair chance hiring. Because to me, it's just a fabulous example of a purpose in a B2B brand. Not only are they having an enormous impact in the world with these people's lives, but then imagine how it's proofing out its own background checking services for the rest of humanity. If they can do it and make that work for ex-cons, then think about the impact they can have with everybody else. So it certainly is, a profit play, but above and beyond that, it's much more of a purpose play in my mind's eye, and I can't wait to really hear their story.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing that story. So that's a great example. How would you advise marketers who are, there's this balance between function and purpose and communicating that, because you have to, at the end of the day, you have to produce something really great. So that Checkr product, it's going to need to performance background checks well for everyone, like you said, but it also has this huge mission component. Like, how do you weave those together, and what do you what do you lead with in terms of communicating your value proposition to the market?
Well, you've got to know it, right? First and foremost. And here's a great little exercise one of my guests taught me on my show. Pull out a piece of paper, just a white piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, and take some time to think about this. On the left-hand side, I want you to write down 3 things that you personally care about. Like and prioritize them. What are the top 3 things? And of course, this is relation to business. Now you talk about your family, of course, and your church maybe, or whatever you're doing there. But I want you to think about that social/business connection. What are 3 things in the world that you really care about? And even order those. What's the number 1? And then number 2 and number 3. And then on the other side of that page, write down 3 ways, select one of those, that one that's at the very top of the list. Write down 3 ways that is showing up in your business, in your day-to-day life at work, and what's going on. In that, you're going to find that purpose, because if you're the owner, the CEO, the founder of that business, then that business has to stand for something that you stand for. It's a direct expression of who you are and what you stand for. You find that, and then write down, what is that purpose statement? And I like to use the and, but, therefore, to write that purpose statement down. And here's a real simple way to do that. So once you do the first exercise, what are the top 3 things I care about? Take that number 1 and then say, how does it get expressed in my business, or how could you express that in your business that way? And then now you've got to articulate it. You've got to define it, what you just did. And now you've got to refine it and share it with the world. The and, but, therefore framework. This 3 words that I have found is literally the DNA or cornerstone of all storytelling. You can throw out the 17-step hero's journey, the 15-step Blake Snyder beats the story, even the 7 to 8-step Pixar way. Use these 3 words, because you'll be using the 3 forces of story of agreement, contradiction, and consequence. And I want you to just write it down this way. Now, your story is not about you, it's about your audience. So I want you to write, who is your number 1 audience? And I want you to be as specific as possible. This is the Pareto principle, that your number 1 audience is 80% of your sales. So who is the number 1 audience? What do they want in relation to your offering? And why is that important to them? That's our statement of agreement. That's our first sentence using and. Who's your audience? What do they want? And why is that important to them? Now we're going to introduce conflict or contradiction. But why don't they have it? Because of what? What's standing in their way? What gap or barrier? What problem are you going to solve for them so that they can get what they want in relation to what you have to offer? That's your statement of contradiction. Then you go to the therefore. Here's your statement of consequence. So we've got agreement, contradiction, therefore statement of consequence. How is tomorrow going to be brighter when they buy into what you have to offer? Or another way to think of it is, how are you uniquely equipped to help them get what they want through your product or service offering? So write that down, and that will then become this bigger mission. It will help you articulate what your purpose is in the world. For instance, I'll give you my very basic ABT. It's the shortest ABT I can think of for me. That spells out my purpose. You communicate, and I'll even make it a little bit bigger. My number 1 audience. You are a leader of a purpose-driven brand, and you have an important story to tell. But you're not connecting like you could, because you're leading with logic and reason, when what your audience really wants is the emotional pull of a story. Therefore, learn how to excel through the stories you tell, using the proven 3 narrative frameworks of the Business of Story platform, where you will not only move audiences to action, you will excite them to action. So that's awesome. A little longer version. What I was going to start with was the shortest version ever, and that is, you communicate and care, but bore. Therefore, tell a story. So that's the basic awesome. Foundation of it, and then you grow on it. But that's what I would want your viewers here to do, is first do that exercise to identify, what is your purpose in the world? What do you make happen out there? And then use the and, but, therefore framework to be able to articulate that not only first to yourself and your team, but then to make it crystal clear to your audience out there.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, I love the ABT framework. I read about it in the narrative gym for business, and it's such a a easy and simple way to communicate everything from LinkedIn posts to Twitter to mission statements to writing a brief for a video. It gives you like a easy framework to align yourself to. And it's funny, I was talking to you about this earlier, Park. I have a 4-year-old son, and actually he wants to tell a story every night before he goes to bed. So I use the ABT because it helps me, keep in check, and I can think, oh, okay, this happens and this happens, but then conflict. And so the guy had to slay the dragon or whatever it is, and I can just kind of keep going with that framework, and it just makes it more fun. And I think it gives me a leg up over my wife and telling stories, but I won't tell her that.
It's so much fun to see parents like you take the ABT and take it home to their kids. Last week, I was working with Master Electronics. They're a very large electronics distribution firm here in Arizona. And one of their sales leaders returned home after their big event up to Seattle, and he sent me a video of his daughter, Sienna. He taught her how to use the ABT using my short little online course, the ABTs of Agile Communications. She then created a little video in her green Girl Scout outfit to sell Girl Scout cookies using the ABT, and it's absolutely adorable. And again, she's using the 3 forces of story like you are: agreement, contradiction, consequence. And our subconscious limbic brain absolutely loves it, because that brain is a pattern-seeking, cause and effect, decision-making brain. So when we use the ABT for our purpose-driven leaders out there to articulate what you stand for in the world, you literally hand deliver that message so it lands right the first time to that subconscious brain, so it doesn't even have to work for it. And that's the beauty of the ABT.
That's awesome. Well, Park, there's so much that I would love to get into and wish we had, all day to talk, going thinking about like culture and how to activate it within your business once you have that purpose. And it's just fun to think about. And I want to check out your brand Bewitchery book, as well as you have a few courses on ABT and business storytelling. And you have been so generous to give my audience, or our audience here, access through businessofstory.com/pitch purpose. Can you tell us what the offer is there on that website for the audience?
So the book that Tony's talking about is this book, The Narrative Gym for Business, that I wrote with my good friend, Dr. Randy Olson, who taught me about the and, but, therefore, over a decade ago. Randy is a evolutionary PhD biologist out of Harvard who went to USC Film School then and has produced 3 documentaries on climate change and global warming, but has written several books teaching scientists how to use what he learned from Hollywood on story structure to communicate their big ideas. All of his work now is focused on the and, but, therefore. He and I have been helping evolve this and develop the ABT ever since. I've translated it into the business world, and you can download a free copy of this book at businessofstory.com/pitch-purpose. /pitch-purpose. You can also take the quick online course there, 30% off. We've got a promo code for you there. You can check that out. And then if you want a deeper dive into the story cycle system, then by all means, get your copy of Brand Bewitchery. It takes you through the 10 steps with all kinds of exercises. And even in my episode number 350 on Business of Story, I take you through the story cycle system of Brand Bewitchery. It's a 1-hour show. The first 15 minutes is a quick dive through the 10 steps. The resulting 45 minutes then are exercises in each one of those steps that you can start using to develop your own purpose-driven brand. So that's for you there so cool. At Business of Story podcast, show number 350.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, Park. It's been a pleasure and an honor to host you on the podcast, and keep telling those stories and driving purpose-driven businesses forward.
I will, Tony, and thank you so much. And I would just remind your audiences, as they're learning to become more powerful and compelling, purpose-driven storytellers, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make sure that that's an epic one. Thanks so much for having me here, man.
My pleasure. Take care.